A good evening, first of all. This is the second of 3 parts on the Maamer Hashem li Biozroi, Havaya li Biozroi, which the Rebbe said in Tofshin Yud Zayin 60 years ago this year. And as I explained in the last class, this is one of the Maimorim which the previous Rebbe said during the week of his Geula in the year Tov Reish Pei Zayin, 1927, the year that he was actually released from prison and later from exile and so on. In fact, this particular Maamer was written and said on Yud Beis Tammuz, a Tuesday, Yud Beis Tammuz itself. And in the last class, we learned the Maamer itself. In other words, the very basic point or message of the Maamer, which means we learned the beginning and the end. And what we found is that the Maamer is a juxtaposition of 2 psukim, one against the other. Both of them describing David HaMelech and his enemies, his opposition, his challenges, but with very, very different conclusions. In one pasuk, Zemireis hayuli chukecha beveis megurei, David HaMelech finds himself as an alien in a foreign land. And chukecha, the learning of Torah, and as we'll see at length tonight, learning Torah on the highest levels with the understanding that the entire world depends, hangs, lives from diktuk echad shel divrei Torah, one nuance in Torah. For him was midas, and of course the first meaning of the words midas was it was shevach, it praised the Torah and it gave him great joy. But the second translation of midas hayli chukecha is that it's from the words lazamar aritzim, to cut off, to destroy his opposition and his enemies. So in this pasuk, Zemiris hayili chukecha beveis megurei, David HaMelech has enemies, he has a difficult situation, and the Torah is providing the Zmirais, which is going to destroy his enemies. So the Gemara says David HaMelech was punished for this. So our Maamer explains to us why. Why was David HaMelech punished? Because the purpose is not to destroy the enemies, but to transform them. And that's why the other pasuk, which is the Dibra Mascha of this Maamer, Havaya li Biozroi, V'ani ere b'soynai, is considered greater, higher, superior to the pasuk Zmires Haya li chukecha beveis megurei, because in this pasuk David HaMelech is saying the Eibishter Havaya, that Hashem was li, with me, Biozroi, amongst those who help me. And the understanding is that Biozroi means the opponents, the opposition that David HaMelech has, that by overcoming them, he's going to extract from them the Tutzei Kedusha, sparks of holiness. And the sparks of holiness which David HaMelech successfully extracts from his opponents are called Biozroi. So in this pasuk, Havaya li Biozroi means that David HaMelech is not indicating how he uses a tool to destroy his enemies, but to transform them and extract Nitzutze Kedusha from them. And that's how the pasuk finishes, V'ani ere b'soynai, I'll be able to see the elokus, the godliness inside of my enemies. So in short, Havaya li Biozroi v'ani ere b'soynai is a greater level than Zmires Haya li chukecha beveis megurei, because in the latter pasuk, David HaMelech's enemies, David HaMelech's opposition, is not being destroyed by koyach HaTorah or in whatever other way, but rather it's being transformed into Kedusha through the Avodah of David HaMelech. And one of the ideas that we learned, that the Rebbe says in the Maamer, is that one of the ways of understanding the difference between the pasuk Zmires Haya li chukecha beveis megurei, David HaMelech has enemies, and the Torah destroys the enemies. And in the other pasuk, Hashem li Biozroi, V'ani ere b'soynai, the David HaMelech has enemies, and the enemies are overcome, is because in the first pasuk we're talking about Torah, and in the second pasuk we're talking about Tefillah. One of the differences between Torah and Tefillah, Torah is a light that comes from heaven to earth. And in this case, it's a powerful light that comes from heaven to earth that overwhelms and destroys the opponents of David HaMelech. As opposed to in the pasuk Hashem li Biozroi v'ani ere b'soynai, that David HaMelech is using tefillah, which is mulmata l'mayla, from the bottom up. And since David HaMelech is using tefillah, it raises up the enemies rather than destroy the enemies. In other words, still, what the 2 psukim have in common is that David HaMelech has an enemy. What separates the 2 psukim is how he combats the enemy. In one pasuk, the word that is used to denote, to represent what David HaMelech employs to combat the enemy is the word chukim, chukecha. And in the other pasuk, the word that represents the weapon, so to speak, that David HaMelech employs to combat his enemies is the word havaya. Zmires hayli chukecha beveis megorei, chukim provide the zmires. And in the other pasuk, havaya libi oizrei, the Eibishter is the libi oizrei, and therefore the vaniyah beseiner. So if I had to put what follows into other words, I would say it this way. The next two classes, tonight's class, and the class we're going to give next time, is really an analysis of these two words. Tonight's class, we're going to talk about the word chukecha, and the next class, we're going to talk about the word havaya. And we already know that the word chukecha is connected to Torah, to a light which comes from heaven to earth, and therefore can be overwhelming. And in the next class, we're going to be analyzing the word havaya, but how havaya is connected to tefillah from the bottom up, and therefore doesn't destroy the opposition, but transforms him. And what we're going to discover is the limitation in the word chukecha. That notwithstanding the word chukecha is going to represent something incredibly, incredibly high, the highest of the high. Nevertheless, chukecha is going to represent some kind of a limitation. And havaya is going to be even above the limitation of the word chukecha, as you'll see in Maamer Hashem in the next class. So having repeated, in short, what we learned in the previous class, let's get to today's class, but bear in mind it's the middle class, it's the second of three. In the first class, we juxtaposed the psukim against one another and argued about what is superior, about the pasuk havaya li be'ezrei v'niyada v'seinei, over the pasuk zmires hayli chokecha beveis megurei. Now we're going to analyze the first of these two psukim, zmires hayli chokecha beveis megurei. And Maamer Hashem, next time we're going to analyze the pasuk havaya Hashem li be'ezrei v'niyada v'seinei, but most fundamentally, most importantly, the word havaya itself. So let's begin on the bottom of page Nun Vav, which is where we're holding, Sif Dalet. Okay, and I'm going to give you a second introduction, and this introduction I'll try to give as briefly as I can. We know that there are many, many ways of categorizing mitzvahs in groups. There's a lot of groupings of mitzvahs. For example, the Rambam divides up mitzvahs into two groups, mitzvahs saseh and mitzvahs leisaseh. The Bahag and the Rasag and others divide up mitzvahs into four groups. I forget what all of them are, but I remember that one of them is Onshim. There's different groupings of mitzvahs. In Chassidus, when they categorize mitzvahs in groups, one of the categorizations would be Chakika, Ksiva, and Amira. Carved letters, written letters, and oral letters, which represent three levels of Torah, three levels of Yiddishkeit, which is Ein Seif, Atzilus, and Malchus, lower than Atzilus. But one of the classic ways of dividing up mitzvahs into groups is Eides, Chukim, and Mishpat. And in the class that we had last week, we already touched on the concept of Eides, Chukim, and Mishpat, but I want to sort of speak preface. Who's the first Gadol B'Yisrael to use the categorization of mitzvahs into these three groups, Eides, Chukim, and Mishpat? I think it's a Ramban. I don't know this for sure. But in the Maamer, in footnote 11, the Rebbe references the Ramban and Pashas V'Aschan, I believe there's also a Ramban and Pashas B'Shalach, after the Shira, where Sham, Som, Lei, Cheku, Mishpat, V'Sham, Niso, I believe that Ramban also over there talks about different divisions of mitzvahs. But I believe that Ramban is the first one to divide mitzvahs into three categories, Eides, Chukim, and Mishpat. And of course, we learned last time that Mishpatim means mitzvahs that are so logical that you can learn them from animals. Chukim are mitzvahs that have no logic whatsoever. It's chukah chakakti, and if I can't, one of the emphases is that we connect the word chukah to the word chakika, chakika, which is higher than ishtashos, like I mentioned before. And in between the two is Eides. Eides makes sense once the Torah explains it to you. You wouldn't come up with it on your own, but once the Torah teaches it to you, in hindsight, in retrospect, you say, aha, it makes sense. Before the division into three of Eides, Chukim, and Mishpatim, what was there? And the answer basically is there was a division into two. You have this in Asag and Psadigon, and you have this also made in Nevuchim and Rambam, and I think in the Shmei Neprachim. And that is what's called Sichliyos and Shemiyos. It's two categorizations, Sichliyos and Shemiyos. Sichliyos basically means logical mitzvahs, and Shemiyos, understand that the Rasag is an Arabic sefer translated into Hebrew, so the word Shemiyos is the translator's word, is the Metargem's word. Shemiyos means mitzvahs that you do because you accept, because you follow, because you have discipline. Sichliyos means mitzvahs that make sense, and Shemiyos means mitzvahs that just accept, like Nasav and Nishma. And these two categorizations, which means logical mitzvahs, mishpatim, and supralogical mitzvahs, chukim, is the way mitzvahs were divided before this Ramban. Now in our Maamer, we actually go through it in two stages. Perek Dalet, Perek Hey, and Perek Vav. Divides mitzvahs into two groups. How? It puts mishpatim and edus together. They say the mitzvahs that are completely logical or logical in part, and chukim are the second category of mitzvahs which are higher than reason. Beginning in Perek Zayin, as you'll see soon, the Rebbe divides the two into three. It's almost like as if in the earlier part of this Maamer, we're appreciating the division of mitzvahs as it was understood by earlier Rishonim, that there's only two divisions, Sichliyos and Shemiyos, logical mitzvahs, mitzvahs that require discipline and subservience. And then later on, it changes from 2 to 3, Eidos, Chukim, and Mishpat. And tonight we're going to do both of those things. We're going to learn first Perakim Dalet Hey and Vav that explain two divisions of mitzvahs, and you'll see how it ties into the pasuk. Zemides Hayu Lichukecha Beveis Megurei. And after that, the two is going to become 3, 8 Mishpatim, Eidos, and Chukim. And we're still going to explain why the pasuk says Zemides Hayu Lichukecha Beveis Megurei. So before I begin, let me just repeat. If we have 2 or 3 different groups of mitzvahs, and the David HaMelech says, Zmidas Hayli Chukecha Beveis Megurei. David HaMelech could just as well have said, Zmidas Hayli Mishpatecha Beveis Megurei. Or David HaMelech could have also said, Zmidas Hayli Eidecha Beveis Megurei. But he chooses to say Chukecha. And that's what the Maamer is about. If mitzvahs are divided into 2 groups, or into 3 groups, namely, Mishpatim and Eidos together, Sichliyos, versus Chukim, Shemiyos, or is divided up into 3 groups, Eidos, Chukim, and Mishpatim, why does David HaMelech say that the mitzvahs that provided him with the pleasure and affected the Lazamer Aritz and the defeat of his enemy are dafka the Chukim and not the Mishpatim, or not the Mishpatim and the Eidos? This is the question which our Maamer is now going to address. So the Rebbe begins at the bottom of page Daled V'ha'inyan, who, and he explains. The shtei chalukes hakloliyes shebemitzvahs. You should know, mitzvahs are divided into 2 basic groups. And again, in the earlier Rishonim, that's how it is, Sichliyos and Shemiyos. It's only later that the 2 becomes 3. What are they? Mitzvahs, the Eidos and Mishpatim, go together, because they're mitzvahs that have reason, whether they're so logical that you can learn them from an animal, or they're not so logical and you only learn them from history of the Jewish people. Sheyesh aleim tam, that have some kind of an explanation. And of course, the Hebrew word tam means reason, and the Hebrew word tam also means agishmak, a delight, a pleasure. And then the second group is mitzvahs, the chukim shalamayla mayatam, the mitzvahs which are chukim, which are edicts, which are laws that don't have any logic whatsoever, that are above tam, they're above reason, they're above pleasure. Says the Rebbe, hey, these 2 categorizations of mitzvahs, and remember, later the 2 is going to become 3, but in the meantime we have only 2, shnei yinyonim kloli and b'avedas havayah. They're 2 basic ideas in the way a yid serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Rebbe Dafke is going to say it twice. First he's going to say it as it applies to mitzvahs, and then he's going to say it how it applies to life, or to Avodas Hashem, that is even broader than mitzvahs. And he explains that when a yid serves the Eibishter, there's 2 things, Aved, the Tam, Vadas, Mishpat, that part of a yid serving the Eibishter must be reasonable. And you'll see soon why it must be reasonable. It has to be judged. And then you have Aved, the Kabbalah, Chukim, those mitzvahs, that area of Yiddishkeit, which is about discipline, about accepting the yoke of heaven, which is called Chukim. And the Rebbe says, Shetzrichem liyes b'chol mitzvah. They must be in every single mitzvah. So even though we divide mitzvahs into 2 groups, Eidos and Mishpatim are 1 group, and Chukim are a different group, every Eid and Mishpat has to be done both as an Eid and a Mishpat, as well as a Chayk. Conversely, every mitzvah which is a Chayk must be done both as an Eid and a Mishpat, as well as a Chayk. As the Rebbe V'ha'inyan, second line from the bottom page of the Pshat is Azoi. When he performs mitzvahs, there's two ideas. Number one, mitzvah, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu are above reason. And we'll see later how edel this word ratzon goes. It's a very, very edel word ratzon. And the Rebbe says, the will of Hashem, which is in all mitzvahs, which is the basis of our subservience, our Kabbalah cell to the Eibishter, comes from the will of the Eibishter. All mitzvahs are the same. And Beis, number two, we know that the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes down into wisdom. Of the Torah, the whole mitzvah, every mitzvah gets a tam, gets a reason, gets a geschmack, gets an understanding. But then he adds something else. Moreover, kol mitzvah, once you understand that mitzvahs have reasons, you also understand that you need to have all of the mitzvahs. You can't say, I'll do only one mitzvah and I'll pay the obligation of all the other mitzvahs with that one mitzvah. Like the Maamer Hashem, Eisek b'mitzvah, potem and mitzvah. If a person is busy with one mitzvah, like tzedakah, pinyin shvuyim, he's part of other mitzvahs, like saying Shema and so on. But it's still not ideal. Ideally, you have a person that has to do all the mitzvahs. Because if you only do one mitzvah repeatedly, and you're saying that you're fulfilling the other mitzvahs based on the principle of Eisek b'mitzvah, potem and mitzvah, so on the level of ratzon, it makes no difference because they're all the same. But on the level that every mitzvah is a gilui eir prati, you don't have those other gilui eir prati. The halacha is, the din is, the truth is, ha'oisek b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah, but you should really do all of them because every mitzvah brings down a different light. In other words, every mitzvah has a different reason that the person can relate to and understand, and every mitzvah serves a different purpose. Life is complex, Yiddishkeit is complex, and you need all of the Rabach mitzvahs to achieve what Yiddishkeit is meant to achieve. The Zehu, which is another way of explaining the Zayar, Masher Amach, Pikudin, and Amach, even in the Malka. There's 248 mitzvahs, and the 248 mitzvahs correspond to the 248 limbs of Adam Ha'elyon, and the Rebbe says, D'chol Eiver Ukli L'keach Prati, just like in the human body, is made up of Ramach Eiver and Meshasa Gidim, 248 limbs and so on. And everybody understands that you have only one right pinky and one left pinky. If a person had two right pinkies and no left pinkies, it'd be a kalak, it'd be a cripple. And they're different. Every avid is distinct. Every organ, every limb is different. Every limb and every organ has a different function and a different life. So it's the variety, it's the diversity, it's the totality of the different aspects of what a human being possesses that makes him a human being, and you need each and every one. Similarly, you need to have each and every mitzvah, because each and every mitzvah is a different limb and brings down a different light or a different life. So when you're talking about the second idea of mitzvahs that they come down into tam, there's 2 points. Number one, that they make sense, and number two, that they're various. They're dafka different. You don't have an option of doing only one mitzvah. You have to do all the Ramach mitzvahs, because each one fills a different niche, serves a different purpose, and a person isn't complete until he does all of them. Okay? Now there's a footnote 23, which is fantastic, at least to me. The footnote 23 makes a very interesting observation. And the observation is that if you learn Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe brings this Zayar, Amach Pikudim, Inyan Amach Eivin the Malka, that there's 248 mitzvahs that correspond to the 200 limbs of Adam Ha'elyon. The Alter Rebbe's point there is not to explain the differences between one limb and another, but to the contrary, to explain how they have something in common. And what is that? That they're all kelim for the ratzon. Whether we're talking about the right hand or the left hand or the right foot or the left foot, they're all bottled to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, whether you're talking about tefillin or mezuzah or shal yad or shal rosh or matzah or challah or bikurim or truma, whichever mitzvah it is, they're kelim for the ratzon ha'elyon. So the Rebbe here in this footnote 23 says, it works out that according to what the Alter Rebbe writes in chapter 23, even though he says that there's 248 mitzvahs that correspond to the 248 limbs, whereas or in as much as each one of those mitzvahs is carrying the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're really the same. So therefore, after the Rebbe makes this observation, that in Tanya, the implication that the Ramach Eiverim are only all bottled to the same ratzon, the Ramach mitzvahs, we could only bottle the same ratzon. So the Rebbe says, Bepashta Sarach Leimer, it's the second line of footnote 23, the Zesha mitzvahs nekrai meivarim ugam mitad inyan aprati shabachol eiver. It isn't only because there's 248 different ways to carry Ratzon Ha'elyon, but because there's 240 different things. And this has to do with the fact that every mitzvah has a different purpose, and a different tam, and a different chayes, and a different end. Okay? So, going back to the top of page Nun Zayin again, he says, mitzvahs, the edus and mishpatim represent the idea that Torah and mitzvahs come down to a level of seichel, we could understand them, which means it comes down to a level of diversity, of different types, and you need each one. Continues the Rebbe 3 lines in the top of page Nun Zayin. The fact that there are explanations for mitzvahs, and the fact that each mitzvah is different, and therefore you need to have all of them to be healthy and whole, is only the way mitzvahs come down to Madrega of Chochmah, Kamei L'mayla is on high. But higher than Chochmah, in other words, on the Madrega of Ratzon, even though there's 613 mitzvahs, they're all one Ratzon. Says the Rebbe, Mizenim Shechu, and since the Torah and mitzvahs come down into Chochmah of Atzilus, and in as much as they come down to Chochmah Atzilus, they have timing. And they also have pratim. Says the Rebbe, they ishtalshus through a whole series of steps of the chain reaction of worlds comes timei ha-mitzvahs shebegalya de Torah, the reasons for mitzvahs and nigla de Torah, ha-tayim ve'edis u'mishpatim, the reasons given for witness mitzvahs and judgment mitzvahs, common sense mitzvahs, kumei bepashtus, has they understood here on this earth. And as I may have mentioned to in previous occasions, there's so many different madrigas of timei ha-mitzvahs. I think I have a class someplace online on this subject, but I'm not sure. For example, when you're in a sag, or you're in a nevuchim, which means the many mitzvahs, those who give timei mitzvahs, which are based on seichel anushi, or not seichel alaki, so basically they say two things. The reasons for mitzvahs, first of all, are for midas tevis, to refine one's character. And the second reason for mitzvahs is to have tikkun days, to have good days. You should think about the world correctly. You should have a good value system of what's real. And doing the mitzvahs refines your character, and doing the mitzvahs teaches you new days, good days, correct days. All of this is very down to earth. It's very worldly. So the Rebbe says you should know these timei mitzvahs, which are so down to earth, evolve from the timei mitzvahs they are in Atzilus, where you have Chochmah, and you have Ramach Pikudin, Ramach Pratim, and so on. Continues the Rebbe and he says, now that we explained that even though there's two groupings of mitzvahs, Eidus and Mishpatim are one group, and Chukam are a different group, but we don't see them as two separate things, but we see them as perfect overlap. That when he does any mitzvah, he has to have two kavanas. The kavana of tam and the kavana of Kabbalah Seil. Says the Rebbe Zel Mashakiyim mitzvahs. When he does any mitzvah, tzarach lishtei kavanas, has to be two kavanas, two different intentions. On the one hand, kavana klolos. On the other hand, kavana pratis. A basic kavana and a precise kavana, a specific kavana. Of course, he had this also in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch when he talks about mitzvahs tzrichas kavana. Shemitzad haros and shalamayla mitam, in as much the mitzvah the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which are above reason. And in Mr. Shem later you'll see how powerful this will is. Tzarech li is kavana klolos. There's one intention in every mitzvah. And what is that kavana? Kabbalah Seil, accepting the yoke of heaven. In other words, lekayim ratzon havaya, whether I'm putting on tefillin, or I'm bringing carbon Pesach, or I'm commemorating Yom Kippur, or I'm being careful not to wear shatnez, I'm fulfilling the same thing, which is ratzon havaya, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On the other hand, mitzadinyan, the timei mitzvahs, every mitzvah has a different reason. Here, tzarech li yisakavana pratis, again to the specific intention of each mitzvah, hashayachas la'isa mitzvah, which is distinct to each mitzvah. And in each and every mitzvah, including all of the chukim, and including all of the eidis, you have to have both kavanas, the kavana pratis, and the kavana klaus. V'zehu, and this is why, mashe shnei yon yon and the chukim u'mishpatim. When we speak about dividing a mitzvahs into groupings, and we divide it into two groups. One group is chukim mitzvahs, which we can't understand. And the second group is mishpatim and eidis mitzvahs, which we can understand. Heim shnei and yonim kloliyim shevachol mitzvah mitzvah. These are two ideas that exist within each and every mitzvah. In other words, shegama mitzvahs the eidis u'mishpatim. Those mitzvahs that make sense. Sheyesh alayam tam, which you can understand. And moreover, you can appreciate how each one serves a different purpose. Tzarech lekayim beikir, must be carried out primarily. Mipnei shem ratzon havaya, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, k'mei hachukim, higher than reason. So even mitzvahs that make sense, and in as much as they make sense, they're diverse and distinct. Each one is different. You have to do them based on the Ratzon of Hashem, which makes them all the same, all uniform. But on the other hand, mitzvahs which make no sense at all, and therefore you're doing them only from the perspective of the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there is the specific intention, the specific explanation for each mitzvah, even chukim, mashai kol mitzvah, gamma mitzvahs the chukim, even mitzvahs that make no sense, who in nimshach eir v'gili prati, there's a specific light and a specific revelation. In other words, even if you and I may not know the time for the chukim, but the chukim also have time. I mean, he brings in footnote 27 that the chukim are included in the machevrim. So even though chukim relate to Ratzon the Elyon, if when you have Ratzon, all the mitzvahs are the same, nevertheless there's different chukim. Which means to say that the chukim are not really chukim. There's an aspect of each chayik which has a tam. So all mitzvahs of mishpatim and mitzvahs of chukim have to be done as mishpatim, and all mitzvahs of mishpatim and mitzvahs of chukim have to be done as chukim. And now the Rebbe continues and he says in the second half of Perek Hey, 5 lines into the paragraph, on page Nun Zayin, we say there's something else which is true. That the kol echad mishnei inyanim eilu chukim and mishpatim, that each of these two groups, mitzvahs as they are specific and with reason, and mitzvahs as they're absolute and without reason, who inyan klal b'avodas Hashem is a basic aspect of Yid service for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Leirak b'kiyam mitzvahs. It's not limited to how a Yid does mitzvahs. Elagam b'kolos hanhagas ha'adav. It applies not only to when you're doing the mitzvahs, but life in general. What the Rebbe would call, what Torah would call, what Chassidus would call. Kol masecha yilashem shamayim. And b'chol d'rachecha de'ehu. There are these two aspects. Explains the Rebbe, the inyan mishpatim hu. What does it mean, mishpat? Kimavu arba Maamer, as the previous Rebbe explains in this Maamer Hashem li Biozroi, lishpeit kol davar, everything has to be judged using reason, discernment, seichel. Im zeh matam b'seichel b'chochmas ateh. This is correct according to the wisdom of the Torah. V'gam kishad davar mitzadat me'ein be'shum shemetz iser. It's even conceivable you should be studying something that in and of itself is not a crime. There's nothing wrong with it. Nevertheless, tzarich lishkel heitiv, one must weigh well, im zeh lo yigrem chalishes, if even though there's nothing wrong with this particular phenomena, will it cause a weakness, be'ezeh mitzvah in some other mitzvah, or minig Yisrael, some other custom b'Yisrael, sh'al tzarich litches es hadavar mikol v'kol, in which case you have to push it away. So mishpat means every inyan in life has to be judged. And the judgment of every day of life is really a seichel judgment. Do I need it? Do I not need it? Is it correct? Is it not correct? Do I need to do it? Do I not need to do it? And so on. So that's where you have the mishpatim in your regular life. Everything in your regular life has to be judged. On the other hand, v'chol chukim, v'inyan chukim, who watch the content of the chukim in one's regular life. Havei, the Kabbalah Sel Machashmaim, the work of accepting the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. That must be leirak beis kiyam mitzvah, not only when one is performing a mitzvah, meshach halayim, every second of every single day, a Yid stands in a Maamer Dematzah of Kabbalah Sel. In footnote 29, he refers to Perek Beis, which talks about Shmiras Hainayim and so on. But in every moment of a person's life, they must be in a state of Yira, in a state of Kabbalah Sel, in a state of Bittul, even if they're not doing anything. And therefore, says the Rebbe, just like it's true in mitzvahs, it is edus and mishpatim, chukim and mishpatim, it's true in life that on the one hand, everything has to be judged. On the other hand, when a person is approaching his life, he approaches it with a discipline and with acceptance. Whatever the will of the Eibishter is his will. Having established two concepts, mishpatim and edus together and chukim separate, we now go back to the pasuk, Zemiris hayilichukecha beveis magura, and you ask the question again. We know that there's two types of mitzvahs, chukim l'chud and edus mishpatim l'chud. So why does David HaMelech say Zemiris hayilichukecha beveis magura? Why doesn't David HaMelech say Zemiris hayili mishpatecha ve'edecha or edesecha beveis magura? So the Rebbe gives a gvaldik answer, a very simple answer. Bottom of page Nun Zayin v'zehu Zemiris hayilichukecha ukecha dafka. Why does David HaMelech, when praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu for helping him out when he finds himself in a foreign land, beveis magure, by giving him the Torah and Torah's atzmos and hus, says the Rebbe, which group of mitzvahs does David single out? Chukim. The kavon is akasa b'chukim. He, with David HaMelech, chooses to say that the chukim, the mitzvahs he doesn't understand, gave him the most strength. it means to say, le hasog de chukim, not specifically laws that don't make any sense, kiyim l'chol ha-mitzvahs, all mitzvahs. And the point is that you do all mitzvahs like a chek. The kasher kiyum v'chein limudam, when a person does a mitzvah and learns about a mitzvah. Hu mitzad, turn to page nun ches now. Hu mitzad tzi v'yagzeres HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'efen nechukecha. It's done only as based on the command and the decree of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hu kachakakti, I carved the decree, gzeir gazarti, I cut also a decree, only then does Torah have this impact, does mitzvahs have this impact of being zemiris. So if David HaMelech is doing mitzvahs as mishpatim and edis, it's not going to bring him to this place of zemiris because when you're doing mitzvahs levels of mishpatim and edis, they make sense. It's not chukim, and therefore it does not have the impact of zemiris. And therefore, the Malach says, Zemiris Hayili Chukecha, which in Yonam of Yiddishkeit provided me with the music, with the melodies, with the Geshmak, with the ability to defeat my enemies when I have Veis Magure, Dafke Chukecha. Why? And he gives a very simple answer, second line from the top of page Nurchaz V'ha'inu, the Pshat is as follows. The Zeh Shekala Elamis, we know, and we discussed it in the previous class. This, of course, is in Igeres HaKedesh in Kuntashach and Zemiris David Kadeslo. David Zemiris Kadeslo. Shakol ha'elam is that all of the worlds are betelim b'mitzias agabeduktik echad b'dukitera. All of the worlds are nullified in their form, relative to one nuance in one halacha in Torah. In other words, since istakel beiraiso bara alma, the Eibush looked into the Torah and created the world. The Torah is the blueprint of the world, and it's the pnimius of the world. Pnimius ratzon the elyon v'cheftzei hamiti, as we discussed in the last class. And if you take away Torah mitzvahs, there's no reason to have a world. If you have no reason to have a world, the world wouldn't be. So the chayas of all the worlds depends on Torah mitzvahs. Says the Rebbe here in this Maamer, it depends taken off Torah mitzvahs, but specifically mitzvahs tzedakah. Mitzvahs that are called chukim. And the reason is very simple. The whole point is that David HaMelech sees the world as nothing compared to Torah. The idea that David HaMelech observes that all of the worlds are nullified in their form. When compared to one nuance. In the nuances of Torah, says the Rebbe, this is primarily the way Torah comes from Kesed Shalamayla Michochma. That we say, Shemitzad Bechinazu, Torah that comes from Kesed above Chochma, HaMitzvahs, the mitzvahs. V'chein kol digduki halachas, including all of their nuances, HaMitzad, the only way they can be explained, Zeh shekein Allah b'retzeinah yizbarach, as the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ratzon Shalamayla Mitam Vadas, and not the Inyan HaSeichel. In other words, you understand that there's two ideas to a mitzvah. The idea is a mitzvah has to be accepted as the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that a mitzvah, the idea that a mitzvah has to be understood to know its avodah value to you now in this time and place and so on. Says the Rebbe, which aspect of the mitzvah relates to the world as nothing? The aspect of the mitzvah which is a chayk, which is higher than reason. We make all mitzvahs the same as we discussed before. Is it legabi this madrega, that we say Zemiris, the whole world is nullified, or Lagabi, the lower Madrega, where you're trying to understand, make sense out of the mitzvahs. Says the Rebbe, the level of Torah comes down into wisdom. Seichel. Since the mitzvahs and the nuances about them. Mitzad bechinas ha-chochma that involve the Eibish's wisdom minatzad the time of do a time. In order to bring Meichen into the film, then you dafke in this way, and so on and so forth. So mitzvahs have reasons. The minute a mitzvah has a reason, the mitzvah has a relativism to the world, because the mitzvahs, the reasons for the mitzvahs is about worldliness. The reasons for the mitzvahs are about worldliness, and each mitzvah is doing something different for the world, for a different reason. That means the mitzvahs are reckoning with the reality of the world. So you cannot say Zmiris. You cannot say that the world is batal mitzvahs, when in fact you're seeing how each mitzvah is giving chayas to this world in a different way. All the nuance in halachas on this level. Why there's so many nuances? Why is there so much detail to bring the Eibish's life into the world? And therefore, Medayek, David HaMelech observes. If David HaMelech was talking about mishpatim and edus, he couldn't say Zmiris. Because the reason David HaMelech is able to say Zmiris is because he's talking about mitzvahs on the level of chukim. And compared to the level of chukim, the world has no tfisas makom, so he can say Zmiris. What level of Torah and mitzvahs makes the enemies of David HaMelech disappear? Zmiris miloshin zamir aritzim, the madrega of Torah, which is chukim. When a person is learning Torah, but it's in such a way you understands that every mitzvah is in the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, when he's learning Torah, they give the Jew pleasure, because they give the Eibush the pleasure. But he finds himself in a foreign land. Because of all the oppression, harassment that he suffers from his enemies, they have no significance to him. This affects the world. His enemies are destroyed. But when you do a mitzvah mitzat seichel v'tam, since there's a seichel v'tam of the mitzvah in relationship with the world, so the world has a tfisas makom l'gabe the mitzvah. Right? If you go back to about 9 lines to the end of the paragraph, he says, in other words, if you're doing a mitzvah, and when you're doing the mitzvah, you think about what the mitzvah is going to accomplish in the world, you can't say that to the mitzvah the world is nothing. The whole point of the mitzvah is to accomplish something in the world. On the other hand, if you're doing a mitzvah, and the whole point of doing this mitzvah is to fulfill the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and how one is nullified to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore the world does not take his makom, that's a totally different idea. So David HaMelech says, I cannot say Zmires Hayoli Mishpatecha, because since those mitzvahs are reasonable, are logical, so they can't provide the union of Zmires. Dafke Chukecha, which are mitzvahs which have no seichel explanation whatsoever, they, because to them the world is nothing, therefore David HaMelech gets joy from them, that the darkness of his life shouldn't matter to him, because he's living in a world that has the Eibishter's Torah, and the Torah is the Ikeh, and the Torah is Midas. He gives the Eibishter pleasure. So we just finished Sivov. And until this point, we understand mitzvahs in 2 groups, in the wording of the earlier Rishonim, Sichliyes and Shemiyes, and in the language of this Maamer, Mishpatim and Eidus are one group, and Chukim are another group. And the Rebbe explained the Pshat in the Pasuk. If there's 2 types of mitzvahs, why Dafke Zmires, Zmires Ailu Chukecha Beveis Megorah, Dafke Chukim provide this inyan of Zmires? So the Rebbe says, because the whole point that the world does no tfisas makom, the diktuk echad midikdukei Torah is so great that kol ha'elam is betelim l'gabeha. In Mishpatim and Eidis, you cannot say that Diktuk Echad of the Mishpatei HaTeira, the whole world is bottled. To the contrary, because the reasons for the Mishpatim and the Eidis are to come into the world, so the world has a Tfisas Mak. And therefore, Zmiris Hayuli Chukecha, the mitzvahs on the level of Kesed, the mitzvahs on the level where they're all equal, and they're all connected to Kabbalah sales, serves the purpose of Zmiris. The world has nothing to it, it's Mizamir. Now we begin again. And now we divide Torah mitzvahs into 3 groups: Eidim, Eidus, Chukim, and Mishpatim. He doesn't put Eidus with Mishpatim; he puts it separate. Now, just to mention, there are a number of Maimorim where they talk about Eidus, Chukim, and Mishpatim. For example, there's the Maimorim of Pesach, right? Chacham, Mahu Eimer, Moha Eides, VaChukim, VaMishpatim, Hashatziv, VaElokeinu Eschem. In those Maimorim, when they talk about Eidus, Chukim, and Mishpatim, they say Eidus are higher than Chukim. The lowest level is Mishpatim, the second level of Chukim, the third level is Eidus. But this Maamer is different. This Maamer, even now, that he divides up the mitzvahs into 3 groupings rather than into 2 groupings, Eidus, Chukim, and Mishpatim, Chukim are going to be higher not only than Mishpatim, they're going to be higher also than Eidus, as you'll see soon. And ultimately, the derher that separates Eidus from Chukim is going to be quite edel. So let's begin and continue. Peirik Zayin Obi or Inyan Be'emek Yeser. Now that we explained why I had to say Zmiras Ailu Chukecha, as opposed to mishpatecha ve'eidecha ve'eidesecha beveis megure. Because chukim are higher than mishpatim and eides. Let's explain this pasuk and this idea, but on a deeper level. Yuvan behegdem tchila inyan eides, that we really generalized and simplified before, because we put eides and mishpatim together in one group. Let's now separate them into two groups. Says the Rebbe, that there really is an Eidin of Eidos. Not only is a separate category of mitzvahs, but there is how in every single one of the Tayag mitzvahs there's Eidos. Just like we said before that the mishpatim have an element of chukim, and chukim have an element of mishpatim. We're now saying that mishpatim have elements of chukim and Eidos. And chukim have elements of mishpatim and Eidos. And Eidos have elements of mishpatim and chukim as well. Gam ba mitzvahs the chukim u'the mishpatim, there's also an element of Eidos. Al derech shen is bayil ilben egel mishpatim v'chukim. Just like we spoke earlier, when we divided the mitzvahs into two groupings, that each mitzvah has two aspects. Now that we're dividing the mitzvahs into three groupings, every mitzvah has three aspects. And the Rebbe explains, what's the concept of mishpatim, what's the concept of Eidos, and what's the concept of chukim. The previous Rebbe explains in his Maamer Yoga, made us Biyanka V'Seder Some Biozroi, which the Rebbe said in Tafshin, when they came to America. The Masha mitzvahs, the idea is that even mitzvahs, gamma mitzvahs, the mishpatim u the chukim, even a mitzvah which makes total sense, or a mitzvah which makes no sense at all, nikra eidus, it's also a witness, it's also a testimony, lefi shehei mamshichim u megalim, because every mitzvah, besides for what it brings down as a mishpat, and besides for what it brings down as a chayik, also has what it brings down as an eidus. What does it bring down as a eidus? Helem ha'atzmi, the atzma seidintov. When you do a mitzvah, it's a witness because it brings down the Eibishter himself, so to speak, shalamayla, which is higher than gilui, and even higher than Helem HaShayach HaLagili, what's hidden that's close to being revealed. So Eidus reveals Helem HaAtzmi Da'atzma Sein Sof. Now when you read these words, that Eidus reveals Helem HaAtzmi Da'atzma Sein Sof, you start to think, how could Chukim possibly be higher than this? But that's what we're going to be learning. That Mishpatim are the lowest level. Eidus, which are Mamshich, Umegale, Helem HaAtzmi Da'atzma Sein Sof, are going to be the second level. And chukim are going to be even higher than that, as you'll see momentarily. So the Rebbe explains what an eidus means. What does it mean that a mitzvah is a witness? So he explains it using very niggling terms, very halachic terms. When do you need witnesses in the physical world? Says the Rebbe, you don't need witness for something you can see for yourself. You don't need witness for something which everybody knows. You need witness for something which you don't know and you can't see. When something is obvious, you don't need a witness. Everybody sees it. A witness is necessary for something which only one person sees and others don't see. That's when you have to have a witness. Then there are things which are not yet known. They're hidden, but they will be known tomorrow, in the words of the Rebbe before. You don't have to have a witness. You don't need a witness to tell you something you already know. You don't even need a witness to tell you something which you're going to find out tomorrow. And of course, there's examples in halacha that because something is a milsa david laglu, you don't have to have edus. Well, not the same kind of edus. So you don't need a witness to tell you something you know. You don't need a witness to tell you something you're going to find out. You need a witness to tell you something you're never going to know. And what is the nimshal and ishtalshal? Those things that you already know are going to be mamala kalam. Things that you're going to later find out are going to be sevav kalam. Things that you'll never know, and you only know through Eidus is Atzmus U'Mosein Sabach. Al derech zo beruchni, it's the same as true in spiritual terms, the equivalent of something which doesn't need Eidus because you could see it, is the inyan of Eira Mamala, the light which fills up the world in a way that's revealed in the world. That it's Davar Agolu, it's revealed, Shemusik Metadasechel, that a person understands it. Ukiyadu, Abinyan B'Zariach Zalkala Chasidus explains that when you are a physical creation, you don't know what the neshama is. But you know what life is because you experience it. The Kamei Shebor La'adam as a human being is certain Shesh Nefesh Mechaye as Gufe. There's a soul that gives life to his body. Because Ayidei Shemarge Shegufei Chai, he feels alive. Hu yedeya bar, he knows with certainty, she'ein ze mitzad haguf atzmi, it's not his body. Ela shesh nefesh ha'machayes guf, or the soul giving life to his body. A human being appreciates that life is not biology, it's not chemistry, it's nefesh, it's neshama, it's spirituality. And it is the wonderful vart from the Rebbe, right? When the Rebbe lost the Rebbe, so the Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Pekarsky, was asked to ask the Rebbe to look after his own health. And the Rebbe's response to that request was, he doesn't understand why he's asking him to look after his own health. He's healthy. And he said that Rebbe, the Schwerer gesagt, a gesunter fühlt nicht sein Guf. A healthy person doesn't feel his body. When ich feel nicht mein Guf, I don't feel my body. A healthy person feels immortal. A healthy person feels like he's going to live forever. You know why? Because a healthy person feels the neshama, and the neshama taka lives forever. The moment you become ill, all of a sudden you start to appreciate your mortality because you become aware of the guf, the michush, the interference to the neshama. So even though you don't know that life is godliness, but you know that life is spiritual. So a physical human being appreciates that inside him there's chayis ruchni, there's a spiritual life, which is the truth of his mitzias. It's true about the world at large. When a person sees a lebedik welt, a living world, he knows clearly just like in his individual personage, in his life. He feels that there's a neshama life which is sustaining him. So the Elam Gadol, the great world, also has chayas. That's mamalik alam. So this doesn't require somebody else to tell it to you. This is not even the kind of thing you're going to find out tomorrow. This you can see. Life on an immanent level, life on an individuated level, we all see and experience, and we know it bepashtas. So you don't have to have a witness to come along and tell you, you should know you're alive, you know you're living. Moreover, 3 lines from the bottom of page Nun Ches, Ve'eira Seviv Shalamaylam Yislapshas Be'elamis, even the light which is hidden, that's above the world, which is called Seviv Kalalman. Of course, Seviv Kalalman is an infinite light. Because Seviv Kalalman is not limited to the world, they're not measured to the world. It's like the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's infinite, but even Seviv Kalalman is called Seviv Kalalman. Even though it's above all the world, it's above all the worlds in a way that has indirect relationship with the world, and therefore it's Milsa Davida Lagloya. Maybe now you don't know Seviv Kalalman, but tomorrow you will. Helem Hashayech Legiloy. That a person can know Seviv Kalalman later after he knows Mamalik Kalalman. Okamavua Bakam Kemis Chassidus explains. When a person appreciates and understands what life is on a level of Mamalik Kalalman, right? He begins with himself. Man neshama asaguf. He looks into his own body, and he sees that there's a different neshama for his right hand and for his left hand and for his right foot, to his left foot and his heart and his lungs and his brain and so on. So he understands that just like there's life in each part of his body, there's life in each part of the world. That's Mamalik Kalalman. But, and this he appreciates very obviously, but he appreciates in addition Shuhu Ha'arabul, that the life which is in his body is not what life really is, it's the life which is close enough to his body to infuse itself in his body. The fact that you're living, and living in such a way that there's a fusion, there's a unification between the body and the life, between the world and the life, shows that this life is tailored to the body, tailored to the world, and it is therefore called the ha'ara. Ha'ara means it's not what life is by itself, it's what life is in relationship with you. Mizeh boyim. Top of page Nuntes. Automatically, that brings the personally the idea to know that there has to be a light which is removed, wondrous in relationship with the world. Shahu hamakir, which is the source, which is the basis for the light which is going to be manifest in a revealed and an applied way. Because since you understand that the life in your guf is tailored to your guf, since you understand the life in your world is tailored to your world, there has to be the source of life which isn't tailored. Says the Rebbe, you can compare this to it's logically arguable that not everything can make sense. Similarly, when you look at life, the way you experience it personally and the way you experience it cosmically, you appreciate that there's more to life than what you're able to experience. So for the Rebbe says, Mamalik Alam, when you know directly, Seviv Kalam, indirect is called the Milsa Davide Legloy. And I must tell you that this is hard for me to understand a little bit, because it says in Maamer Hashem, particularly Maamer Pesach, which talk about Amunah, that Goyim can understand only Mamala Kalam and they cannot understand Seviv Kalam. Which is why Goyim are only expected to believe in Mamala Kalam, not expected to believe in Seviv Kalam, as opposed to Yidden, because they're able to relate to Seviv Kalam, have to believe in Seviv Kalam also. According to what the Rebbe says here in this Maamer, Seviv Kalam is logically provable. Not only can you prove Mamala Kalam, Ma Neshama Ma'aseh Guf Kachash Baruch Ma'aseh Elam, Ma Kadosh Baruch Ma'aseh Elam Kachas Neshama Ma'aseh Guf, you could prove that it has a source which is higher than Elam and higher than the Guf, which is Seviv. But in so many Mamorim, they say that this is beyond the understanding of a Goy. If Seviv Kalam were entirely logical, a Goy has to be able to understand it. When you say a Jew is able to know something, and a Goy is not able to know it, it's because of the difference in Neshama, not the difference in Seichel. So if you say that Seviv Kalam is Milsa Davide de Geluyef Mamala Kalam, you should have to say that a Goy can also understand it. And in many Mamorim they say that Nilu Chachmi Amech will understand the Seviv Kalam. And I'm sure there's answers to this issue, but this is something which is bothering me as I'm learning the Maamer. But to continue now. Godliness, which we know completely and directly, is called Mamala Kalam, the Neshama in the Guf. The godliness that we know indirectly is called Seviv Kalam, outside of the Neshama in the Guf, and this we know indirectly from Mamala Kalam. However, Vinyan Ha'edus, so weird, you have to have something which is a witness. In other words, where do you need something to tell you explicitly this exists? Because you never come to this itself. Hu ba'atzmos ein itself. There goes another course on the level of atzmos. That means godliness as it exists in relationship with itself. Shalamai lagami seva, which is about Seviv Kalam, which now lagami is completely hidden. Moreover, vein shayach beishom yediyah v'asaga, you'll never know it, you'll never understand it. Kam le yediyah sashlila. You can't even understand it in an indirect way. That's called Eidos. Now, in Shari Ichet Ve'emunah, chapters 8, 9, and 10, the Alter Rebbe talks about Sfiris, Mamala Kalaman, he talks about Ein Seif, and he talks about Atzmos. And what he says is that Mamala Kalaman we all know, because we see in the world Chochma, we have Chochma inside. Seif of Kalaman, says the Alter Rebbe, we know through Derech Yediyas HaShlila. We look at what the world is, we understand Chochma, and appreciate the Eibishter is more than this. So, Mamala Kalam, you have what's called Yediyas HaChiyuv. Seviv Kalam, you have what's called Yediyas HaShlila. In the Eibishter himself, not only can there not be a direct knowledge, can't be an even indirect knowledge. And the Alter Rebbe says the ability to understand Atzmos is just like a person will say about Seichel Omuk, that Ef Shalamasha Shabiyadayim Shekol Hashemeya Yitzchak Lo. You may be familiar with this expression. That when you talk about an idea that's deep, and you say, this idea is so deep you can't touch it, it's not the pshat that doesn't make any sense, it makes you laugh, it's foolish. It has no relevance to reason at all. So Mamala Kalam you can understand directly, Seviv Kalam you can understand indirectly, Atzmos Samhus you can understand, it's Kol Hashemeya Yitzchak Le. Any effort to try and understand it is laughed at, it's impossible to understand. But we nevertheless know it. So how could you know Atzmos Samhus if you can't know it not with Derech Yediyas HaChiyuv and not with Derech Yediyas HaShlila? And the answer is Eidos. Eidos means we know it because the Eibishter gives it to us through a testimony, through a witness. Our brain doesn't figure it out directly or indirectly, it's brought to us as an Eidos. Says the Rebbe on page Nuntes, 4 lines. From the top of the page, V'zeu, Mashakol mitzvah nikraim Eidos, every mitzvah. Besides, for every mitzvah having an aspect of it being a mishpat, which means it's distinct and understandable and judged. And besides, for the fact that every mitzvah has an aspect, it's called a chayk, which means an aspect where all are the same. And you have to have Kabbalah, Seil, and Bittel. Every mitzvah is in of Eidos. Lefi, what is the concept of Eidos? Sheimam Shiach and Mumagalim, that they draw down and reveal Atzmos Ein Seif, the level of godliness which is called Atzmos Shalamai Lagami Seif, which is higher even than Seif. So now, if Eidos represents Atzmos Ein Seif, and Mishpatim represents Mamala Kalam, you would think, right? So what does Chukim represent? So a part of you would say, for the purposes of symmetry, for things to be neat and simple, Eidus reveals Atzmas Ein Seif, Mishpatim reveals a Malakalam, and the Chukim reveals Seif Kalam. And perhaps that's the Pshat in the Maimorim of Pesach, Mo Eidus v'Chukim Mishpatim. But that's not the way this works. In our Maimer, Mishpatim, logical mitzvahs, are going to be mitzvahs that reveal Mamali and Seif. Eidus is going to reveal Atzmas Ein Seif, and as you'll see soon, Chukim are going to reveal something which is even higher than Atzmas Ein Seif. And the Rebbe begins Perek Ches by exploring this. V'tzarich lahav, and I have a question. If we understand that mishpatim, logical mitzvahs, brings a godliness into the world, which is like b'malak kalam and seviv kalam, and Eidus is a mitzvah which brings a godliness into the world, which you'll never be able to figure out because that's what's safe. So the question is, what's the difference between Eidus and chukim? The idea that there are mitzvahs that represent Atmas Ein Seif. That means you'll never come to Atmas Ein Seif yourself unless the Eibishter gives them to you. And the Eibishter gives them to us in mitzvahs which are Eidus for Atmas Ein Seif. Mipnei Shem Ritzeni is Baruch Rasan Shalamayla Mitam, to the will of HaKadosh Baruch, which is beyond reason. The question now is, Mahu Chilik Ben Inyan Eidus L'Inyan Chukim. If Eidus are mitzvahs that are witnesses for the level of Ein Seif called Atzmos, how is a chayk different than that and higher than that? And the question is compounded. We now understand that there's a specific category of mitzvahs that are called Eidus. And they're assigned in a recollection of a particular event. Inyan Hatam. The idea of a reason im inyan Eidus shebeklal some mitzvahs with the way we're explaining Eidus now. The fact that they're a witness for Atzmas Ein Seif, mipnei sheim ratzon shalamayla mitam, because they're above reason. And this question, I'm not sure if the Rebbe answers in the Maamer, but the question is, Shabbos is an Eidus, Pesach is an Eidus. How is Shabbos and Pesach specifically an Eidus for the idea of Atzmas Ein Seif? Okay, this is the question. Let me preface. Okay, before we continue, let me tell you what the Rebbe is going to say. Okay. There is a concept of Mesiras Nefesh. What's Mesiras Nefesh? Concept of Mesiras Nefesh means you give all of yourself away to Hashem. You own you, and you're giving yourself away to Hashem completely. Or to say it in different words, the concept of Mesiras Nefesh is you love Hashem so much, you're prepared to give everything away to Him for that love. That's Mesiras Nefesh. And it would seem that the idea that a person loves Hashem so much that he's prepared to give everything away to the Eibush that he has is the highest madrega. But if you think about it, you can actually make the argument that if you love the Eibush so much, and you're therefore willing to give everything you have away to the Eibishter, there's a very selfish element in that. I love Hashem so much, and therefore I'm giving away everything I have to the Eibishter. So this Maamer is making this distinction, that when you do a mitzvah on a level of Mesiras Nefesh, because you love Hashem so much, you're prepared to give everything you have away to the Eibishter, that's taka infinite avodah, but it's infinite avodah connected to you. There is something higher than that. What's higher than loving Hashem so much and therefore giving everything you have away to the Eibishter? And that is where there's no you. You don't love, and you're not giving away. You simply evacuate yourself and allow the Eibishter to come in. There's one thing which is higher than a ratzon shalamayla mitam vadas. What's higher than the Ratzon Shalamayla Mitam Vadas? A Kabbalah Seil. Ratzon Shalamayla Mitam Vadas means to say that I love Hashem so much, I want Him so much, I'll die for Him. Kabbalah Seil means there's no I. It's not I want so much. I get out of the way and be what He wants me to be. And that's going to be the difference between Eidus and Chukim. Mishpatim are going to be mitzvahs on a logical level, and Mamalak Kalaman and Seviv Kalaman. Eidus are going to be mitzvahs which represent Atmas Ein Seif, which is totally higher than Seichel. Like I said before, any attempt to understand it is the category of Kol HaShemeya Yitzchak Lei. It's laughable to attempt to understand it if Hashem wouldn't give it to us b'derech Eidus, but you want it. You want to means your infinity desires the Eibishter in an infinite way. So you're a Metzias. Above that is Bittel. And that's going to be a Chukim. And therefore, the Rebbe is going to say Chukim are higher than Eidos, and the Rebbe is going to explain the difference between Chukim and Eidos. So to repeat it one more time, Mishpata means mitzvahs that I do because they make sense to me in a limited way. Eidos means mitzvahs that I do because they make sense to me in a level where I should give everything I have away for those mitzvahs, because I'm connecting to Atzmas Avedein Zeiv. And Chukim is mitzvahs where there's simply no I. I get myself out of the way, and whatever the Eibishter wants happens. Now let's read it inside. I believe that was clear. Let's read it inside. V'ha'inyan, who we are in the middle of the middle paragraph on page Nuntes, Sifches. 5 lines into the paragraph says the Rebbe v'ha'inyan pshatas azoi. The inyan ha'edis Rebbe mitzvahs b'vedas ha'adam. In a Yid service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The idea that there is a mitzvah, that there's a concept in Yiddishkeit which is a witness for Atmas Avedein Sof, says the Rebbe, who ha'aveda the re'usa d'liba. Is serving Hashem with the will of the heart. And the Rebbe is going to bring a Maamer from Samach Vav, which is a Zayir apparently, the Re'usa d'liba, who, what does it mean, the will of the heart? Haratzon belakus shemitadetzem Hashem. But you want Hashem. But not you want Hashem based on logic, not you want Hashem based on emotion, not you want Hashem based on your sensitivity, you want Hashem based on your essence. Your essence wants the Eibishter. Why does the essence of a Yid want the Eibishter? Because the essence of a Yid is the Eibishter. So when the essence of the Yid, which is the Eibishter, wants the Eibishter, he wants the Eibishter in an infinite way. And that's called Re'usa d'liba, Shaydezeh teifsem b'ha'atzmas, which actually gets you in touch with Atzmas. Kemaimer, like it's quoted from in the Zayir and it's brought in the Samach Vav, quote, Leis machshava tfisa beiklal. No keli, no vessel can grasp the Eibishter himself. Now skip the parenthesis, which is about 1.5 lines. Avol nitfas iyo beruta d'liba. You can grasp the Eibishter with the will of the heart. Of course, some places they say leis machshava tfisa beiklal, period. But in this Maamer, which is, I think it's Neich and Samach Vav, and then of course later on it's repeated in one of the Mamorim of the Chasen and Margele B'Puma Derava, and it makes it into this Maamer as well. Leis machshava tfisa beiklal avol nitfas iyo beruta d'liba. God is not available, but the will of a heart can have God. Why? Because the will of the heart is Yechidah. Yechidah is one with the Eibishter. Because Yechidah is one with the Eibishter, in its wanting the Eibishter, it has the Eibishter. So you can again make the case that if you Pintel Yid, wants Hashem in an infinite way, and this is called Eidos, how could there be something which is higher than that? Continues the Rebbe, and Chukim is Kabbalah Sel. Now the Rebbe says, what's the difference between wanting Hashem to the point of sacrificing your whole life for Him and just submitting to His will? What's the difference? So the Rebbe says like this. There's a difference between wanting Hashem in an infinite way and therefore having Him and simply submitting to His will, which is Kabbalah Sel. When a Yid serves Hashem infinitely because he wants Him infinitely, so there's you who wants. Mekiven shesh leirotz, and the person wants. Hagam sharotz, and even though this want is mitzadais kashas, that's a manasham batzma said, if it's an infinite one coming from the infinite neshama's connection to the infinite God, there's a form, there's a wanter and a wanted. And the wanter wants the wanted infinitely because there's a level where they're the same in one. Even when the nature of this want has total subservience. Why? It's not a selfish want, it is simply an inherent want, a basic want. All he wants is godliness revealed into this world. The purpose of Dira B'Tachtem should be realized. In the very fact that he wants is a mitzias. In other words, if I want for me, that's selfish. But if I want for the Eibishter, it's selfless. But even if I want for the Eibishter, which is a selfless want, the urge, the fact that I want, even though I'm wanting for him, is a mitzias. On the other hand, 3 lines from the end of Perek Ches, v'yamitis inyan bittul, the true notion of bittul HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as we have discussed so many times, there really is no English translation for the word bittul. It's aveda the Kabbalah Sel. What does Kabbalah Sel accept? In the yoke of had them shukamei ever, just like a slave, she'en l'shum ritzei, has no want whatsoever. What he does is mitzad el ha'adin shemut lalav. It's the yoke of his master upon him. Which makes him compelled. It forces him to do the will of his master. But the point is, it's not his will, it's his master's will. Because the slave is the property of his master. And because the slave is the property of his master, the slave has no want. The master's want is his. So there's two very, very high levels here, but they're different. When your Yechida wants Gila Lakus, and he wants it for the Eibishter, it's not for itself. It's also a very high level of Bittul. But the Yechida is an entity that wants for the Eibishter. When your Yechida is like a slave to a master, there's no Metzias of the slave. There's simply how the slave is the property of the master. And therefore, as high as Mesiras Nefesh is, as high as the Ratzon of Yechida is, as high as the Usa the Liba is, Kabbalah Sela is even higher. And like I mentioned before, this is discussed, I think, in Neach and Deish Samach Vav, and then that's the source of the Maim from the Friedrich Rebbe, one of them of Chasna from Pezai and Margel Puma Derava, which the Rebbe repeated many times, and it's very similar ideas here in this Maim of Ayali Be'ez. So we understand the difference. Mishpatim are mitzvahs that make sense. A mitzvah that makes sense has a self-interest. I want this because it's going to serve my purposes. It's going to fill my life and my world with Holocaust. Eides means a Yid is doing a mitzvah as a witness, as a testimony for Atzma Ein Sof. How does a Yid do a mitzvah with a testimony for Atzma Ein Sof? Because inside of the Yid there is Atzma Ein Sof. And the Atzma Ein Sof, which is inside of the Yid, wants Atzma Ein Sof. The very fact that she wants is a mitzias. And above those two is chukim, where there's no want whatsoever. There's simply a submission to HaKadosh Baruch. Sif tes, v'hine. Let's continue now. You have these two bittles, yeah? Two bittles. Total subservience to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But one bittel is all about your passion, all about your sacrifice. And the other bittul is about your nothingness. You're not a mitzias. Kabbalah Seil. Hachi lok shabein aveda de edas, laveda de chukim. Once we understand the difference between mitzvahs, which are called edas, and mitzvahs, which are called chukim, mitzvahs that are called edas means mitzvahs that are testimony for Atzma Ein Sof, and they create a want for Atzma Ein Sof, and mitzvahs that are called chukim, which means mitzvahs which have a total subservient to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just like it's true in mitzvahs, it's true in life, in avoida, right? If you remember on page Nun Zayin, in the middle of Sif Hey, he separated between mitzvahs of mishpatim and chukim, and then avoida of mishpatim and chukim. So he's doing the same thing now, that we have the difference between mitzvahs, which are edis, and mitzvahs, which are chukim, which is narrow, and now we're speaking about life, avoida. Says the Rebbe, who dogmas achiluk be'shabeneim being a mitzvahs atzmo. Just like we divided them into two categories of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs based on a strong will, and mitzvahs based on a total subservience. The same is true in life, in avodah. The Rebbe explains it. The mitzvahs when you think about what atzmus wants, when it comes to mitzvahs, is a will which is called etzem. What is the meaning of will which is called etzem? She'eini b'shvil eze kavona. There's no point and end in the fulfillment of a mitzvah, but rather the point of a mitzvah on this level is a mitzvahs atzma, the mitzvahs themselves. So think about it. You can say, I'm going to do a mitzvah, I'm going to reveal godliness in the world. I'm going to do a mitzvah, I'm going to reveal Mamala Kalam in the world. That's Mishpatim. I'm going to do a mitzvah, I'm going to reveal Seviv Kalam in the world. That's also Mishpatim. I'm going to do a mitzvah, I'm going to reveal Atzma Ein Sof in the world. That's called Eidus. I'm going to do a mitzvah, and I will have done a mitzvah, period. That's called Ratzon Atzmi. The highest level of a mitzvah is not a mitzvah that's revealing godliness on this level or that level or the other level, where the only effect of the mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. And that's the difference in life between Eidus and Chukim. Eidus brings Hashem into the world, the light of Hashem into the world. Chukim brings the Chukah into the world, period, because that's what he wants. Which explains that anytime you do a mitzvah, and the effect of that mitzvah is that you bring light of the Eibishter into this world, even if it's called Atzmas of light, Even though this is being done on a level which is higher than reason. Nevertheless, there's two things. There's the act and there's the effect. The act is the mitzvah. The effect is bringing godliness into this world. You can't say it's a reason, because Atzmas Avein Seif is higher than logic. But you can say that it's a cause and an effect, right? You're doing a mitzvah, and the effect is you're bringing godliness into this world. So if you're doing a mitzvah, and the effect is that you're bringing godliness into the world, the mitzvah serves a purpose. On the other hand, the idea they do a mitzvah, and the only purpose in the mitzvah is the mitzvah itself, huba mitzvah is good for the mitzvah itself, which is chukim. And this is the pshat, when you serve Hashem in a level of Eidos, that means to say you serve Hashem as a witness for Atzma saying save. It's called the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bring the highest level of godliness into this world. The Aveda of Chukim is to do the mitzvah, period. Not to bring anything into this world other than to fulfill the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the mitzvah itself. The idea that mitzvahs are Eidos. The point is to reveal godliness. In the person, it's the person's will. Your infinite will brings on infinite godliness. Even the highest levels of the neshama. It's a movement. And of course, there's a lot to discuss about what this means, tnua and hamshacha and ispashtos. But let's just suffice to say, when you want something infinitely, there's you. The mitzvahs, what a person does to bring down mitzvahs, the level of chukim is ratzon atzmi mamish, shalamayla megili is bittel. The Kabbalah says, bittel shemitzad etzem, it's a bittel on level of etzem, which is lamayla mikolin and spashal of any form. In other words, when you're doing mitzvahs on level of Eidos, you see infinite passion. When you do mitzvahs, tzad chukim, there's zero passion. You know why? Because there's no passionate. There's no you. There's the mitzvah. So chukim is higher than Eidos. And of course, both of them are higher than mishpatim. Mishpatim are limited, reveal a finite godliness. They have a logical explanation. They're distinct and they serve different purposes and so on. As the Rebbe said before, all tayag mitzvahs have a mishpat element. All tayag mitzvahs have an Eidos element, which is to reveal Atmas Avein itself in the world and to reveal from a person an infinite will for the Eibishter. And then all tayag mitzvahs have a chukim element. This is what he wants, period. Says the Rebbe v'zehu. Now I get back to the point. The David HaMelech has three types of mitzvahs: mishpatim, Eidos, and chukim. But he says midas hayeli chukecha, the only level of mitzvah, the only level of performing each and every one of the tayag mitzvahs, which is midas. Midas means it's going to give him delight. It's going to make him praise the Eibishter, because mitzvahs are so much greater than the world, and it's going to destroy his enemies. Is dafke chukim. Shekavanosav is that in this words midas hayeli chukecha, it's lishle leirak in the mishpatim and lagama in the Eidos. David HaMelech is saying that not only will mishpatim not provide him with these midas, Eidos won't provide him with these midas. The idea that through mitzvahs he gets this midas, this pleasure, and destroys his enemies is not through mishpatim and not through Eidos. Ki b'darges ha'Eidos, even a mitzvah on a level where it's a witness that reveals Atzma saying safe, and an infinite will in a person, there's a form, there's a self. It's not only in the person that there is a self. Even the mitzvahs themselves, level of Eidos, because when you're doing a mitzvah on a level of Eidos, the point is to bring godliness into the world. So the mitzvah is a servant of the godliness. So the mitzvah itself is not an inyan atzmi. If you do a mitzvah to reveal the infinite godliness of the Eibush in the world, the mitzvah itself is only a means to an end. So you cannot say about that means zmiris. The true recognition the idea that the whole world is nothing compared to one nuance in Torah is when you're talking about Torah on a level which has nothing to do with the world. Not the way it's revealing finite life and light and energy in the world, and not even the way it's revealing the highest godliness in the world. But rather, a darge de chukim, Shadikdukim the Teda, the nuances of the Teda. Mitzad Bechin Nezu, Minyan Atzmi. In Atzmi means they serve only themselves. The only reason to do a mitzvah is for the mitzvah's sake. And when you're doing a mitzvah and there's no reward vis-a-vis the world, not bringing a finite light into the world, nor bringing an infinite light into the world, Mitzad Sheirisham Ha'atzmi Shabbatera, that's L'mayla Mishaychas Le'elam. It's totally above the world. And if it's totally above the world, you can look at this mitzvah and say, Zmiris, it delights me, and it destroys my enemies. So today, we explained the pasuk, Zmiris Ha'ili Chukecha B'veis Magurin. Of course, the emphasis was on the word Chukecha. In two halves. First, we explained Chukim versus Mishpatim and Eidus together. And then we explained Chukim versus Mishpatim separately and Eidus separately. And the next year we're going to discuss, in terms of Kamas, it's not that much to read. It's Perek Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, and Yud Gimel, and Yud Daled, Havaya Li B'Yezid, Infashem Havaya.